Imagine, you're a school bus driver. Your day starts early, the streets are still damp from morning dew, and your only mission is simple: get kids to school safely. But one morning, instead of children stepping onto your bus, three angry adults storm inside. They're not parents coming to complain, they're not there to ask questions. No, these three adults come in screaming, threatening, hurling slurs, and terrifying every child in sight. Now picture this. You're cornered, outnumbered, your hands gripping the steering wheel to stop them from shaking, and yet every single word, every single threat is being recorded from four different angles. And the man they thought was powerless? He had allies who don't mess around. This is the story of how one assistant principal, my dad, took an attack on his school's bus driver and turned it into one of the most satisfying, karma-filled revenge stories you'll ever hear. And hey, before we dive deep into this wild ride, let me ask you something. If you've ever been disrespected, underestimated, or just plain threatened by someone who thought they could get away with it, hit that like button right now. Because by the end of this story, you'll be cheering louder than a courtroom packed with teachers watching justice served. And if you love stories where karma doesn't just knock, but kicks the door down, make sure you're subscribed. You don't want to miss the next one. To really feel the punch of this story, you need to know the battlefield my dad came from. See, for years, my dad was the assistant principal at one of the roughest high schools in our area. And I'm not talking about just a few rowdy kids. I'm talking about overpopulated classrooms, crammed shoulder to shoulder, hallways that smelled like trouble, fights breaking out so often you could practically set your watch by them, drugs in the bathrooms, vandalism in the stairwells, kids getting dragged out in handcuffs while other students just kept walking to class like it was normal. My dad? He was in the thick of it. Day after day, suspension after suspension. He had to break up fights with his own hands, separate kids who came to school ready to throw punches before first period even started. Parents yelling at him was a daily occurrence. The stress was eating him alive. So when he got the chance to transfer to a new school, he took it. And this new place? It was like stepping into another world. Smaller classes, kids actually focused on learning, teachers who weren't burned out, parents who, for the most part, actually cared. The contrast was shocking. My dad used to go home drained, slamming the door and collapsing on the couch. Now, he came home with stories about kids doing science projects, pep rallies, and the occasional harmless prank. At this new school, the biggest drama all year had been one incident. A student with autism had an episode. That was it. Until this. And here's where our cast enters the picture. The bus driver. A humble, hardworking man. The kind of guy who knows every kid's name, waves at parents, and takes his job of getting kids to school seriously. Entitled girl. A junior in high school. Spoiled, sharp-tongued, always ready to cause drama. Entitled mom. The ringleader. Loud, aggressive, quick to rage. Entitled brother. 22 years old, already trouble with the law, quick temper, too old to be hanging around school issues but never missed a chance to stir chaos. Entitled sister. In college but just as toxic as the rest. My dad, the assistant principal. Calm, steady, but with zero tolerance for anyone who threatened his staff or his students. The principal, his boss. Smart enough to know when to step back and let my dad handle things. The school cop. Steady, by the book, respected by students. And finally, the judge. We'll get to him later, but trust me, this man had no patience for fools. It all started with the tiniest spark. One afternoon, as the bus driver was finishing his route, dropping kids off like he always did, entitled girl was stepping off. And here's where the story gets fuzzy. Some say he accidentally brushed against her shoulder. Others claim he told her to watch her mouth after she said something rude. But whatever it was, it sent her into a fury. Because the moment her feet hit that driveway, she yanked out her phone and started texting her mom. An entitled mom? She exploded. She stormed out of the house, screaming at the driver before his foot could even hit the gas pedal. "How dare you touch my daughter? Who do you think you are?" Her voice carried through the neighborhood. Kids on the bus sat frozen. The driver, stunned, tried to explain, but she wasn't listening. She just kept screaming, red-faced, venom dripping from every word. Finally, realizing this wasn't going to de-escalate, the driver shut the door and pulled away. He thought, naively, that was the end of it. Just another parent blowing off steam. But he was wrong. So wrong. The next morning, he pulled up to the same house. He expected entitled girl to come down the driveway, maybe sulking, maybe ignoring him, but instead, 3 figures were waiting. Entitled mom, entitled brother, entitled sister. And here's the kicker. These weren't kids. These were grown adults. When the door hissed open, instead of entitled girl, the 3 of them stepped on. And the moment their shoes hit the steps, the yelling began. They screamed at him. They cursed. They hurled slurs that made kids on the bus shrink into their seats. Entitled brother leaned in, finger practically jabbing the driver's chest. "You ever touch my sister again and you'll regret it." Entitled sister shrieked from behind him, egging him on. Entitled mom? She was the loudest of all. Her voice cracked with rage. And all of this, every second of it, was happening in front of a bus full of kids. Children sat clutching their backpacks, eyes wide, wondering if this was about to turn violent. The driver? He was outnumbered, unarmed, and terrified. But when the 3 of them stormed back down the steps, he slammed the door shut and sped away. His hands were trembling, his heart was racing. He'd just been ambushed, on the job, in front of children. But what the entitled family didn't realize was that their little show had an audience far bigger than the kids sitting silently on that bus, because every bus in the county was outfitted with 4 HD cameras with audio. And those cameras, they caught every word, every threat, every insult. When the bus driver pulled into school, he didn't waste a second. He parked, walked straight into the office, and demanded to see my dad. My dad sat down, watched the footage. His jaw tightened. His hands curled into fists. He wasn't just angry. He was furious. These people thought they could terrorize a man doing his job in front of children? Not in my school. And that's when he went to work. First, he called the school cop. Together, they called local police. Entitled mom? Arrested, on the spot. Charges: malicious harassment, intimidation, trespassing, and more. But my dad wasn't done. Not even close. He didn't mess around. Phase 1 was simple but effective. Entitled girl? Removed from that bus route. Never again would she ride with the same driver. Entitled mom, brother, and sister permanently banned from school property. They couldn't set foot on campus without risking arrest. The bus driver? Given a full month of paid leave. After what he'd been through, he deserved every single day. That was the petty revenge, the immediate slap on the wrist. But my dad was just warming up. Phase 2 was preparation. My dad worked with the district's lawyer. He gathered statements from almost every kid who'd been on that bus. Little kids, high schoolers, every single one of them described the fear they felt when 3 adults stormed onto their bus, screaming. And then came the twist. Entitled brother? He wasn't just some hot-headed 22-year-old. He was already on probation for another crime, a 6-month probationary period to be exact, which meant any slip-up, any violation, and he'd be back behind bars. So when my dad learned that, he knew exactly where this was headed. The stage was set, the evidence was stacked, the only thing left was the courtroom. 6 weeks later, the trials began. My dad, the principal, and the school cop all sat in the courthouse ready to testify if needed. They didn't have to. The evidence was that strong. The bus driver's lawyer spoke first. He laid out the facts, the testimony, the video evidence, though he didn't even need to show it. The words alone painted a clear picture. Entitled Mom's lawyer? Weak. He didn't even try to prove innocence. He just begged for leniency, hoping to shave down whatever sentence she was about to face. Everyone in the courtroom expected the judge to give her maybe a week in jail, maybe just probation. After all, entitled people slip through cracks all the time. But this judge, he was different. He leaned forward, looked her dead in the eyes, and said, "You threatened the life of a man. You terrified children. You trespassed on school property. All for what? Because your daughter was told off? No, this is unacceptable." And then he dropped the hammer. 30 days in jail.